Alright, so look, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how the rich enslaved humanity, not with whips, not with chains, but with systems. They built a modern matrix, a machine that turned life itself into a bill that you can't stop paying. They did it quietly, through money, through control, through illusion. They took the basic gifts of the earth, food, water, land, health, peace, and put a price tag on them. They told us this was freedom, but it's not. Existing as a human being on planet Earth has become an incredibly overwhelming experience. And it's not because there's not enough space or there's not enough resources. It's because the rich has designed a system that extracts, exploits, and hoards everything. They turn the simple act of living into something that you have to beg and pay for. And while we're out here struggling to exist, the rich have reached godlike levels of wealth. Elon Musk's net worth is now close to $450 billion. And he's projected to be the world's first trillionaire within the next couple years. That's one man with more wealth than most nations on this planet. NVIDIA, the company that's powering artificial intelligence, has recently just passed a $4 trillion valuation. That's worth more than the GDP of Germany, India, and Canada combined. Meta, the social media empire that monitors billions of lives daily, is now closing in on $2 trillion. Its entire business model is built on mining human attention and selling it to the highest bidder. Berkshire Hathaway, a company that owns huge parts of the U.S. energy grid, the transportation network, and insurance industry, is closing in on $1 trillion in value. Proof that old money never died, they just learned how to hide in plain sight. And these aren't isolated cases. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, NVIDIA, the 5 biggest American companies together are worth over $15 trillion. Now, to put that in perspective, the U.S. government's annual budget is $6 trillion. 5 companies could fund the government 2 times over and still have trillions left over. If those 5 companies returned even a fraction of what they extracted, you could end poverty overnight in America. That's not exaggeration. That's math. That's how much imbalance we're talking about. They could build a universal basic income system that guarantees that every man, woman, and child will have the means to eat, to live, to exist, and breathe without fear. They could erase homelessness, medical debt, and hunger entirely, and they still be richer than entire continents. But instead of doing that, they build rockets to Mars. They build AI to replace workers. They build data systems to watch and predict human behavior. They build walls of wealth so high that the rest of humanity becomes invisible to their view. While people skip meals, working double shifts, living paycheck to paycheck, these men make more money in a single day than most families see in an entire lifetime. They tell us we're broke. They tell us there's not enough, yet they're sitting on mountains of money so high that it blocks out the sky. They're not living in the same world. They're living off of it. But you can't understand a system like this without understanding the psychology behind it, because this level of greed didn't come from wisdom. It came from fear. A fear passed down through generations. Fear that started long before skyscrapers and stock markets. Long ago, the ancestors of today's elite lived in scarcity, in the cold, in isolation, fighting against nature instead of flowing with it. And because they never healed that fear, they passed it on. It evolved through time. Fear became greed, greed became control, and that control became capitalism. They built an entire world around their wound, a world where the few rule the many through illusion. They don't hoard wealth because they need it, they hoard wealth because it makes them feel safe. They inherited emptiness, and instead of healing it, they built a civilization around it. And that's how the rich enslaved humanity, by spreading their fear to everyone else. And instead of facing that fear, they learned to weaponize it. They built institutions to manage it. Governments, religions, economies. They gave fear structure. They gave it power. They taught the world to live inside their trauma. Now their fear is our economy. Their greed is our culture. Their illusion is our reality. You can see it everywhere. Jobs don't feel like opportunities anymore. They feel like cages. Schools don't feel like places of discovery. They feel like training camps for obedience. Even hospitals, the one place that should feel sacred, feels like a business first and a healing center second. Every system has the same design. Control the body, drain the mind, harvest the energy. It's spiritual imprisonment disguised as normal life. And that control doesn't stop at the institutions. It reaches our minds. They built the perfect machine for slavery and called it society. Capitalism keeps the machine running. It convinces you that your worth equals your productivity, that your value is in what you can produce for somebody richer than you. It drains your energy, turns your time into profit, and sells back your own labor as survival. Consumerism keeps you distracted, makes you chase comfort instead of consciousness. It replaces purpose with possession. They study your desires, shape them, and sell them back to you in shiny, tiny little packages. And then you call it choice. Hyper-individualism keeps you isolated. It teaches you to compete instead of connect, to focus on the me instead of the we, to see community as a weakness instead of a strength. That's how they break the collective, by making everyone believe that they don't need each other. Narcissism keeps you blind, feeds your ego until it becomes a cage. It makes you crave validation instead of truth, attention instead of purpose. It's the final layer of control, when the prisoner polices themselves because they mistake the mirror for the world. And fear is the glue that holds it all together. They teach you to fear the collapse of their systems as if life itself will end without them. They make you believe that you can't survive without their banks, their corporations, their systems of control. They've convinced humanity that without their leadership there is no order, when in truth, It's their order that breeds chaos. They made us forget that the earth provided before the empire, that life thrived long before their governments, their money, or machines, that humans knew how to love, how to live, how to eat, how to build without permission from the powerful. And that's the ultimate trick, to convince the world that slavery is safety, that control is civilization, that dependency is progress. And that's how the system sustains itself. Through capitalism that drains, through consumerism that distracts, through individualism that divides, through narcissism that disconnects, and through fear, the quiet force that convinces us that we can't live without the people who profit from our suffering. This is more than just an economic system. This is a psychological one. It doesn't just control money, it controls minds, shapes how people think, what they believe, what they think is possible. And while people are struggling to breathe, they tell us to blame each other. They say the problem is immigrants, or welfare, or crime. They say it's everyone's fault but theirs. But poverty isn't the problem. Greed is, because poverty doesn't exist in nature. It has to be created. It has to be maintained. We live on a planet overflowing with abundance. There's enough food to feed every person on planet Earth, enough land for every family to have a home, enough energy, water, and technology for every human to live comfortably. But they built walls around abundance and sold it back to us as survival. They turned nature into business and business into control. And they call that the economy. They call that the free market. But freedom doesn't charge rent. Freedom doesn't collect interest. Freedom doesn't demand your life in exchange for survival. Every system around you is designed to keep you chasing, paying, owing, and fearing. That's not freedom. That's a treadmill. That's enslavement with better marketing. They keep you tired so you can't think. They keep you distracted so you can't see. They keep you divided so you never unite. Because if people ever remembered who they are, then this whole matrix would collapse overnight. They don't need chains anymore. They have credit scores. They don't need slave ships. They have wage labor. They don't need overseers. They have algorithms. And that's how they enslaved humanity. Through comfort, convenience, fear, and control. But no illusion can last forever. Not even this one, because people are waking up and the spell is breaking. More and more of us are starting to realize that the power always came from the people and not the system. Money isn't wealth. Awareness is. Competition isn't survival. Connection is. This world was never meant to be a hierarchy. It was meant to be in harmony. And that's what terrifies them the most. They can't control a people who remember their power, a people who remember who they are. Because once you see the truth, you stop feeding the illusion. And once you stop feeding the illusion, then it dies. Balance won't come from the top. It'll come from the ground, from the people. It comes when we remember that our collective power is greater than their wealth. When we build instead of compete. When we share instead of hoard. When we care instead of fear. That's how we restore balance. They built their empire on greed, but we can restore harmony through unity. And if we did, if humanity truly remembered who we are, then life would look completely different. Imagine a world where food isn't a business, it's a birthright. Every community grows its own food and no child ever goes to bed hungry. Imagine neighborhoods powered by clean, shared energy, solar, wind, water, owned by the people who live there. No more electric bills that drain your paycheck just to keep the lights on. Imagine cities without homelessness because empty buildings became homes instead of investments. No more people sleeping on the concrete while these luxury towers are sitting half empty in the sky. Imagine hospitals that heal because health is sacred, not sold. Where medicine is a gift of knowledge, not a privilege of wealth. Imagine schools that teach children how to think and not obey. Where creativity, critical thought, and emotional intelligence are the foundation, not memorization and submission. Imagine an economy where money doesn't rule, where people trade skill, care, and creativity directly, where time is honored, rest is respected, and nobody is punished for being human. That's what life could be like if we weren't enslaved by the rich. If fear didn't govern our choices. If we remember that the earth itself is real wealth, and the people are the real power. We could build systems rooted in balance and not greed. In love, not fear. In truth, not illusion. Because the moment that we remember each other, this matrix falls apart. And in that moment, humanity can begin again. Thanks for watching, y'all. One love. Peace.